Hello everyone, I'm Craig Weaver.
And I'm Brandon Jones.
And this is Down and Dirty. Alright, good morning everyone. This week on Down and Dirty, we're discussing a topic that's been asked a lot by people who are on a member of our Facebook group and just in general, is how you go about getting permissions for different properties. And I think one of the big things we need to discuss here is there's going to be two different types of permissions you're going to be looking at. Brant and I were discussing this just before we started today. We're talking about public and private permissions. There is a difference. So let's just go ahead and start off with what we would call public permissions.
Probably a public permission would be like a park, maybe a school, just something open to the public.
Exactly. And just because it's open to the public does not mean you can detect there.
That's right.
Now, most towns in Indiana, the parks are open season for people, but it's always a good idea just to check at least to make sure.
Like the town that I live in farmland. You cannot detect the park.
Yeah.
So,
and there's probably a good reason for it.
Probably.
It could be that somebody left their holes.
That could be.
Somebody got hurt tripping in somebody's hole that was left open, or maybe they caused damage, which is definitely possible.
It's possible.
There's a lot of damage that can be caused by somebody who's not digging properly.
Right.
Now, getting permission for a public park or whatever is just it's very simple, really. I mean, I would always start with your local police department. Go down there and talk to whoever's at the front desk and say, hey, I'd like to get permission to metal detect here, and find out what they say. They may say it's okay.
Right.
Or they may pass you on to tell you where you need to go.
Right.
You may need to go to the courthouse, you may need to go to the city hall or something like that.
Another thing, when you first pull into the park, if it's banned, if detecting is banned, a lot of times it'll say no metal detecting. Of course, when you see that, you're done. But
yes, exactly.
But yeah. a lot of them are marked. So
yeah. You want to make sure you observe that rule.
Right.
There's absolutely no reason to get yourself arrested for something as silly as a park.
Right.
But yeah, I would always start. Well, I mean, Laura and I have done it many times up in Fort Wayne. We didn't know there was no signs at the parks up there. So we went ahead and called the police department and told them what we'd like to do, and they gave us permission. Now, always make sure you get the name of the person you're talking to.
Right.
That way, just in case somebody does ask, and it could be a police officer, or it could be a city official, somebody that cleans the parks or whatever.
Right.
Know who you talk to so you can refer to that person if you're being questioned about it.
Right.
There's nothing like, anybody can say, well, yeah, I got permission. But if you don't know who it is, then you could be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So, and not everybody's going to know, but that's always a good place to start. Now, here in Indiana, state parks are off limits.
Right. Most of them.
Most of them, yes. We got a question on our channel a couple weeks ago about that. Yeah, state parks, as a general rule, are off limits for metal detection.
Absolutely. So
make sure you don't just wander into a state park, because they will go the distance when it comes to punishing you for that.
I'll just tell a little story.
Okay.
Here. I'm on the fire department, and we went to go burn a house that was on Department of Natural Resources land, and I took my wedding band off and put it on a clipboard. Well, one of my firefighters grabbed the clipboard and lost my wedding band. So I called the game warden, make sure everything was fine, and he's actually a friend of mine, and he told me that if I was caught out there, that I would have a $5,000 fine, lose my vehicle, my metal detector, and everything in my vehicle. So needless to say, I went ahead and bought another wedding band.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You don't want to lose. I mean, that gets you in more trouble than lose your vehicle. I mean, let's just be honest here. But so yeah, especially when it comes to state land, you want to be careful. Don't do anything that's going to get you caught. There are a couple of exceptions to the rule when it comes to state land. A beach is one of them. I know that up at Indiana Dunes, you're allowed to metal detect at certain times.
Right.
People do go up there and do that. And there's another, what is the other part?
Starve Hollow.
Yeah, Starve
Hollow in southern Indiana.
Yeah, they do a seated hunt down there. So yeah, there are some exceptions, but general rule, we know the ones around here that we can get to, they do not allow metal detector. You should not even have a metal detector in your vehicle when you are entering these state parks. So now, the other side of the coin here is going to be private permissions. Now this is where things start to get a little hinky for some people, and it is a big deal. You don't want to end up just detecting parks the rest of your life.
Right.
Some people do. I mean, some people. We've got a member on the group, Zach.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, he kills it at parks.
Yeah, he does good.
He does good, but he is going slow. He's digging the really, really deep signals and things like that. But as you know, like I said, the team is mostly field hunters anyway. So we deal with a lot of farmers ahead of parks and things like that. But you're going to be looking at a couple of different things that you need to worry about when it comes to getting permissions for a field or a standing property and things like that. And we will get to those right after the break. All right, we're back. So what we're talking about now is getting private permissions. Just a private individual that you found. You've done your research. That's what we're assuming here. You've already done your research, and you know this piece of property you're looking at has history and is going to have stuff on it, and you want to dig it.
Right.
Now, that brings up an interesting point. There are some things you don't say when you first approach a person about digging their property, and digging is one of them.
Digging. Treasure. You never say treasure.
Never say treasure. Things like that. Don't bring up things that are going to make them think that you're going to destroy something.
Right.
Or that you're going to end up, making them rich. We've been at this a long time and we're not rich. So, you want to make sure you avoid those kind of phrases. Now, a big question is that we get a lot is how do you get a hold of these people or things like that? Well, there's a lot of resources available now.
A lot of them.
Exactly. The internet is your friend. I mean, I think we've learned that many times over. That, find a phone number or an address or something like that. And talking to people.
That's a big thing. I mean, that's a big help is to talk to people. I mean, people that's lived around an area for a while, they're going to know everybody and who knows, or who owns what. So.
Right. Exactly. So what you're looking at here is you want to have a good approach to the whole thing. You're not just going to want to, and the big thing is just walking up and randomly knocking on doors. In this day and age, unfortunately, is not the best way to do it. You can get some permissions like that. We have gotten some permissions like that, but you got to remember that people are a little bit more afraid these days. And just somebody knocking on the door, no matter what time it be, they may end up putting a gun in your face, or maybe not even answering the door.
Yeah.
So we have found that it's a lot easier to make phone calls. You have a chance to talk with the person, get to know them a little bit. They get to know you a little bit, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Now, once you've discovered who owns this piece of property, let's just say for the sake of argument, Brant. So we got a house here that was built in, let's just say, 1801. They got a nice yard around it, the whole 9 yards. You know, it's a big piece of property, but you know, come Heaven's Gate or high water, that there is probably silver dollars, gold coins, the whole 9 yards in that yard. So when you're going to go up to this, you're talking to this person. Let's just say you call them up. How are you going to approach that situation?
Well, the way that I do it is I'll just tell them that, you know, I did a little research and there could be something there, and I would just like to get permission to see if I can find something. You know, some people mostly with yards, they will ask for, maybe if you find 2 dimes, they would ask for a dime. But I mean, that's just the way I did it. I just be honest and just talk to them and be yourself.
Absolutely. Now, how do you reassure a person who has a nice yard that you're not going to damage that yard?
Well, first of all, I would actually show them what I would be using to dig the target, and you know, those diggers, usually you use a hand digger for a yard, and a pinpointer. Those are small. And I would also tell them that I hunt parks, and that I've never ever had a problem. I mean, that's what I would do.
Exactly. And it's no different than if somebody were approaching you. Think about how they would feel. Make them understand how you're going to take care of their property.
Right.
You're going to make it better. You're going to clean out some junk, and you're not going to cause damage to their property.
Right.
Which is a big deal. Some people really have a thing about their lawns.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. They've got a nice manicured lawn. They put a lot of time and effort and money into.
Right.
They don't want to see a bunch of dead brown spots. So it's important before you start hunting something like that you know for certain that you can do the proper kind of plugs and things like that, and you're not going to cause damage. Right. And that goes for time of year too. If you're in a dry spell, like we went through last summer.
Hit a field.
Yeah, hit a field. We had some yards that we could have hunted that probably would have produced. Yeah. But there was no way we were going to dig them because all it would have done is cause great big brown spots all across it. Yeah. And that's just not a good thing to do. So, all right. So back to what we were talking about as far as, like I said, making sure that there's no issues with digging a hole and making sure that you know that what you're doing when it comes to that kind of thing. But also then the other side of the coin is getting fields, which fields are a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
It's absolutely a lot of fun. You don't have so much concern about causing damage, but you should always fill in your holes, of course.
Absolutely.
No farmer wants to see his whole field full of holes that haven't been filled in.
And also, if you're in a field, you know, if you have a water bottle, when you're done with your water, make sure you don't throw your water bottle down, or I've seen it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and take out your cigarette butts if you happen to smoke or whatever. You have your sandwich out there. Don't throw the baggie or the wrapper on the ground. But take all that stuff out with you. That's a good idea. Now, getting farmers sometimes can be even easier than somebody who has a nice manicured lawn.
Oh yeah.
That's one thing that we like about it.
Yes.
And a lot of questions, well, how do I get a hold of a farmer? Well, you know, maybe you don't know where they live or something like that. One little trick that I've told people in the past is to find out where they gather. Farmers, for the most part, are, you know, mostly older gentlemen a lot of times. I'm not trying to make any generalities here. We're going to have 18-year-old farmers. I'm not old! But what you need to do is find out where they gather. A lot of farmers like to go have coffee and maybe breakfast at the same place every day. They're creatures of habit.
Yep.
We have a restaurant here in town where a lot of the more rural people gather every morning to have coffee, tell stories.
I think probably every town has one of those, and there's nothing wrong with going in there and having a cup of coffee yourself.
Exactly. You have a cup of coffee and you start striking up conversation.
Right.
And a lot of these guys, they love to talk. They love to tell stories. They would love to tell you everything about their land that ever happened there. And that's a good thing. Pay attention, and then by the time you're done, you can get a handshake and a permission for how many thousands of acres without a problem.
Right.
And the good thing about it is that a farm community is a small community.
Right. These guys talk.
Yeah, they talk to each other. They know everybody. That's the beautiful thing. They know everybody, and you can really network your way into a great big group of permissions.
Oh yeah.
In a quick hurry.
Yeah.
And you should be interested in everything a farmer has to say because they're out there working that land.
Right. They know about their land. You know, and when you get your permissions, you can be like, hey, have you seen any brick or have you seen any pottery? And those guys know where this stuff is.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They can they don't need a map to tell you where the houses were. They know where their houses were.
Exactly. It's nothing for them to be out there running a disc and start seeing that stuff coming up.
Yep.
And they'll tell you exactly where it was.
Yep.
So you go right out there, and you may have found a dump. You may have found another house site. Who knows?
And another thing about getting permissions. What has really helped me is, you know, we have stressed this before, but we take out the iron.
Yes.
This is what helps. This is why these guys want us out there. Right. I've got a farmer, and he has told me I've hunted his fields for about 4 or 5 years, and he told me that his breakdowns are down in half. So I'm saving him money.
Right.
So,
absolutely. Yeah, we've got on video one of our hunts where we took out buckets and buckets of iron.
Buckets.
Out of just one field.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff was just nasty stuff sticking right up out of the ground that could have popped
big stuff.
Yeah, could have popped a $5,000 tire on a tractor or a combine.
Yeah.
And that's not the kind of thing you want to see.
Yeah.
And also, it's just it's a good way to get yourself good in the community with these farmers.
Oh yeah.
You know, if it's actually a service for them.
Right.
Because about 98% of the farmers that we hunt with have no interest in what we find.
Right.
They may want to see it or may want to talk about it, but they don't care what you find. They don't want anything that you find.
Yep.
An Indian head penny to them is just a penny.
Right. I like to give my farmers, you know, a little something, and I gave one of my farmers, and it was like an 1880 Indian head penny, and he took it and he went to go sell it. He thought he was a rich man. He got like $1.50 out of it. And the next time I saw him, he said, "You know what?" He said, $1.50. He said, "You keep everything that you find."
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, because the chances are slim, very slim, that you're going to pull anything out of the ground that is going to have enough value to change your life.
Right.
And it's not about that.
Right.
And we have a farmer over there in West Liberty who he only wants to know about the history. He loves the history. So just knowing that kind of thing is enough for him. He doesn't really want any of the different items that we found out of there. He just likes to know about it.
Oh yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with that, and you know, I like to know the history too.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of fun.
It is.
I mean, if some of these items that you pull out could talk.
Oh yeah.
You know,
that'd be amazing.
Could tell you where it's been, what happened, and things like that. But we're putting that kind of thing together, and I think it's important. Detectorists should not only be about out there digging history, but we should also be about preserving history.
Yeah.
Preserving history is important, and not to go on too much of a tirade, but if you look at it, I don't think that everything is being taught the way it used to be.
Yeah.
There's not. I mean, the educational thing is not going, like with historical things, not really being portrayed the way that everybody thinks it should be.
Yeah.
So it's up to us. I mean, keeping the memories alive of a lot of these different things, and Civil War. It doesn't really matter what time period it is.
Right.
There's a lot of great hunters that are out there just pulling stuff for World War II, and that's great.
There's nothing wrong with that.
So, best bet, like I said, just get out there, start getting your permissions, make sure you talk to them, bring up the best ideas you got when it comes to reassuring everybody you're not going to cause any damage, and that you're doing them something good.
Right.
So that's all we got for that. All right, this week on Coin Corner, Brant is going to bring up something that Laura and I found last week.
That's right. We're going to discuss the shield nickel.
It's Purdy too. Purdy.
Oh yeah. The shield nickel was made between 1866 to 1883. The very first ones, the 1866 and half of the 1867s, have on the front it's the 5, and then it has the stars around it, and then it has something called rays, and it's just strips of like, looks like it's sun rays basically.
Yeah.
So those are the only ones that have those. The shield nickel was the very first nickel coin.
Right.
Made of nickel, I should say.
Yeah.
I guess. Very interesting coins. Of course, we find a lot of Indian head pennies, large cents, but I think probably maybe the third would be a shield nickel.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
those are found quite often. So.
And it's one of those rare coins that does not have any kind of a bust on it.
Right. It just has the 5 on the front and then the shield on the back. A good year for those would be 1881, I believe, or 71. 71 is a good year, and it seems like that the newer the shield nickel, the more valuable it would be, because there's less of them made. So.
And on the right, well, they call this shield nickel. It was the first coin made out of nickel. What did we have before the?
Well, we had the silver half dime. So basically, the shield nickel replaced the half dime. So.
Absolutely. So you got a 5-cent coin that's made of a completely different material.
Right.
And through our reading, we found out that a lot of it had to do with the powerful nickel miners, or mining coalitions and things like that. They were powerful lobbyists and were able to push silver out as a alloy for the different.
Which kind of stinks, really.
It really does. It did. I mean, they pushed out through a lot over the years, but yeah, that was the first time that they actually got something out there and said, "Hey, this is what we want to have happen."
Right.
So, and being the first coin to say this is a nickel, as opposed to being a half dime.
Right.
Which I always thought was funny. I mean, a half dime.
Oh yeah. Yeah. A lot of people don't know about those half dimes.
No, they don't.
They still call them a nickel.
Yeah, exactly. When you tell somebody that does not know coins, well, half a dime is a nickel. Well, yeah, it is. But back in those days, it was
a half dime.
A half dime. So that's what we got for Coin Corner today.
Yep.
Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to send it over to Josh, CT Relic Digger over there in Connecticut. He's got a few tips on getting permissions himself over there, and unfortunately, he's in the midst of winter's grip on the East Coast. But,
yeah.
I think I'm pretty sure he'll be fine once the weather gets better and he starts digging all that really old stuff that we don't get here in Indiana. So
yeah.
I try not to feel too sorry for him. So we'll send it over to you, Josh.
Thank you, Indiana Dirt Detectives. What's happening, YouTube? Josh here, CT Relic Digger, representing East Coast, USA, for Down and Dirty. I agree 100%, guys. Being professional and doing some door knocking and landing those older permissions is definitely the key. So take your time, do your homework, do your research, and try to land some old dirt. Sorry about the wind. My tip of the week would be print up a liability release form. They're quick, they're easy, they're generic. You're just putting your name on it, you're signing it. You can fold it up, put it in a nice little envelope, and it just reassures the homeowner that your intent is true. You're asking permission, you want to respect their land, and you're there to have fun and do some digging and hopefully recover some history. So here's an example of one. You can find them online, and like I said, the shorter the better. They don't have to sign anything. Just make sure you sign it, date it, hand it to them. It'll make them feel better. That's my tip of the week. Back to you guys. See you next week.
All right. This week on History Minute, we're going to discuss something a little bit different. But what we're going to do is we're going to ask Brant a question.
Uh-oh.
Now, Brant, in the button and token category, what is your holy grail?
Let's see. On button, I would say probably a George Washington.
Ding, 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 ding.
I would absolutely love to dig one of those. There was a guy on the East Coast. His name's Dave Wise. He dug 5 of those things in a yard one day, and that's just amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
That is so awesome. I would love to dig something like that.
Yeah, and it's hard to believe, but even clear back in the late 1700s, when George Washington, there was buttons made for his campaign and they had some that just said "Long live the president."
Right, and then some of them had the GW in the center.
Right,
and some of them just had an eagle on them, I believe.
Right, and you got to remember is "Long live the president" was along the lines of what the British would say.
Right.
You know, God save the Queen, God save the King, things like that. And because we were still mostly British back then, even George Washington himself, even though he fought against them. But George Washington is regarded as probably one of the, he was the savior of the American Revolution. No doubt in my mind, and things like that. There's been all kinds of tales and things like that about George Washington. But did you know that he was not actually well thought of in the Army when he first started?
Really?
Yes. He was given several different jobs, including overseeing building forts and things like that, and was an absolute failure.
Wow.
He just couldn't get the hang of it. They kept moving him around from here to there until they finally just made him a general. And, which sounds like the government today. If you're a complete screw up, we're going to give you a promotion. But anyway, we see that at work sometimes.
Yeah, we do.
But the fact of the matter is that George Washington did become one of the greatest generals this country has ever seen. And one interesting fact about George Washington, I mean, people actually think he had wooden teeth, but he actually didn't. Teeth were made out of a variety of different materials back then. And one of the problems that he had is that he never got his teeth quite right. And most of the pictures that you see of him that were painted in that day and age, he didn't have any teeth in at the time. They were uncomfortable. They were made out of sometimes toxic materials like lead.
Yeah.
So it was difficult. And sitting for a painting was a long, drawn-out process.
Time-consuming.
Yeah, having to sit there still and not being able to. So if he looks like he's grumpy, he probably was grumpy. But and another little fact that I've always found interesting is that when George Washington found out he had been elected the president, he needed to travel to New York from his home. Even though he was one of the biggest landowners in the country, at the time he was flat broke. So, in order to get up to New York to be inaugurated as the first president, he had to borrow $600 and make the trip. Which was, I mean, $600 back then, that would be...
astronomical.
Yeah, I mean, that was just a lot of money. But, yeah, but he eventually did, and he took on his salary, and he, you know, went on to become, you know, another, you know, great president, and so on and so forth. But it's just one of those things. I mean, there's so many different things that people think about certain people in history are just not true. I mean, he didn't chop down a cherry tree and talk about, you know, telling lies and things like that. And though he wasn't walking around with wooden choppers, and but I think we'll end this with something that I had heard. I was watching a movie, and it was about Abraham Lincoln, who loved to tell stories. Abraham Lincoln tells of a diplomat that was sent over to the UK. And when he got over there, he was, you know, doing the diplomatic thing, and he asked for what at the time they called a water closet, which is what we would call a bathroom.
Right.
So they showed him where it was, and he went in there, and there was a picture of George Washington hanging above the toilet. And so he did his business, came out, and the British guy he was talking with said, "Well, what do you think of that picture in there?" And the diplomat looked at him and said, "Well, I think you placed it pretty good." Like, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "What better way to make a British guy crap himself than George Washington?" So
That's pretty good.
yeah, it was pretty good. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. But that's what we got today for History Minute. We'll see you next time. Well, Brent, we've covered a lot today. I think that's good, but we do have a little bit of an announcement to make here before we sign off for this week. Official release date for the Yeti Digger series. It'll be February 16th. Very exciting, very exciting. As you saw last week, we were out there and we were putting those shovels to the test.
To the test.
And they performed flawlessly.
Yeah, they did good.
It was heavy mud, and it was just, you know, it was hard rock, but we got through it, and it was great. The shovels held up. Our new Serpent, our hand digger, is just a phenomenal tool. Really, we're looking forward to that one getting out.
Yep.
The Kaiju model, which will be the shorter model of the Beast, will be ready for you. It's going to be great. Like I said, so you got a couple weeks. I know you're chomping at the bit. People are wanting them, but you know, it's got to hang in there just a little bit more.
Yeah, we've had a lot of interest in it.
Yeah, definitely. And we're really pushing it. But we did not want to release anything to the public that was not what we would want. And it had to be able to hold up and stand the test. So
yep.
That's what we're looking at. But so for this week, we're going to end up signing off. So keep the coil to the soil.
And your eyes on the prize.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.